Okay, I hope you're ready for the greatest film ever made. It's Jessica Wolf's The Art of Breathing. The only problem with doing it this way is that you won't hear her narration, which I can also upload for you if you want to check that out. But this way, I'm able to sort of break things down for you and talk to you about the things that I think are most relevant to what you are trying to study and do. So you can see even here before she gets into the nitty-gritty details how much movement is really possible in the ribs themselves. The ribs move in 3 dimensions: up and down, front to back, and side to side. And you can perceive all of that as you get these multiple views of the spine and the movement of the ribs. Another thing that is a little bit hard to notice in this video, but that is really important, is you can see here this white material between the bony vertebrae. Those are your discs. And the discs are like little squishy water balloons. And as you inhale, the discs compress and the vertebrae get closer together. And as you exhale, the vertebrae expand and get a little bit further apart. So in a very subtle level, as you inhale, the spine is gathering, and as you exhale, the spine lengthens. So that's just an important element of the structure that is often overlooked when we talk about the breathing. What we're looking here at is this pink shell of muscle. That is your diaphragm. So contrary to popular belief, the diaphragm is not somewhere down here in your abdomen. It is connected to the bottom ribs and is bubbly and domey and goes up underneath the ribs and attaches as high as the sternum. And as we'll start to see here as we resume the video and watch the diaphragm in motion, is as you inhale, the diaphragm descends and ribs expand. And as you exhale, the diaphragm goes back up to its domey position. It's a layer of muscle. It's not a bubble. The diaphragm itself does not fill up with air. It simply moves up and down completely on its own. And as I always say, glory be. Because if it didn't, as soon as you fell asleep, you would leave the mortal world, because without the movement of the diaphragm, you cannot breathe. You do not exist. Here in the back, you can see that each rib connects to the bony processes. That's what these knobs in your back are called. Bony processes of the vertebrae. Here we can see, looking up from below, at that high domey shape of the diaphragm. I often say that the diaphragm itself separates the breathing stuff, which is up here high in the thoracic cavity, from your food stuff, which is down below, and which she'll show us in a little while. These pink spongy structures that you can see here are your lungs. And if you'll take good care, you'll notice that the lungs actually expand up above the collarbone. And if you take a second to actually notice that in your own body, you can feel a little bit of that expansion up above the collarbone as you breathe. I'm going to pause again for a second here so we can take a moment to notice the scapula. This is the official term for your shoulder blade. And if you notice, the next time she spins the thoracic cavity around, the bones of the scapula do not actually connect to your back. They in fact glide over the back of the ribs and are the back of the complete arm structure. And we'll talk a little bit more about the arm structure in a second. But one of the reasons why I want to point that out to you is later on, she's also going to show us the layers of muscle here. It's important for us to remember that as you inhale and exhale, The scapular bones are designed to glide back and forth naturally across the back of the ribs. If there's tension, or if you're holding on or gripping in between the shoulder blades, you're actually inhibiting that natural movement, which then in turn inhibits your breathing. So pay close attention as the thoracic cavity spins around, and see if you can notice that the scapular bones do not actually attach directly to the back ribs. They float. See that little tiny bit of space there? The other thing I want to point out to you here is the collarbone is actually the top of the arm structure. So if you imagine the scapular bones that you were just looking at here, and you can see them sort of through the skeleton because she's taken the mass of the lungs away here, so you can see how things connect to each other. This flat bone in the back is the scapula that we were just looking at, and across here is the collarbone. And if you imagine, this is where your arm attaches. So right where my mouse is right now is about where your humerus bone, that long arm bone from the top of your shoulder, comes down and then attaches at the elbow and hangs on down here. So it's really useful for us to see the anatomical structures here and notice that the arm will attach way outside here. And if you can envision that right where my cursor is, you can see there's quite a lot of space between the ribs and where that arm structure would be, especially here at the top as the ribs start to narrow in and get a little bit smaller. Underneath here, this red fibrous band that you can see is the psoas muscle, P-S-O-A-S. And it's really interesting to note this because, and I'm sorry that my navigation bar is there. No, I can't get it to go away. That the psoas connects to these vertebrae and also connects to the bottom of the diaphragm. And I'll tell you again when she spins it around. You can see here that the psoas, it's kind of hard to appreciate in this picture unless you already know a lot about anatomy, but the psoas is actually going down underneath the femur, which is the top of that big bony leg bone that you have. So what you're seeing here is sort of the top of the femur, and then this little teeny tiny knob is the head of the femur. So here it's attaching to the hip, and there's sort of like the bony top of your big leg bone. So I'm pointing this out to you to let you know this is why we're going to talk about what's happening in your pelvis. And so I'm sorry, every time I move my mouse, that thing comes back up. You can see the bones of the pelvis. They're sort of fanning out like elephant ears. And then in between there is that red fibrous band, the psoas muscle that's descending on either side. And so if your pelvis is out of alignment, either tipped too far forward or back, or leaning from one side to the other, we're going to start to place stress on the psoas muscle. It's out of neutral alignment, and because of the way that it connects to the diaphragm and the ribs and the spine, it's also going to inhibit your free and natural breathing. So again, here's this pink fibrous dome of the psoas, spongy lung tissue up here, liver, big red, stomach, smaller and pink, and here's some intestinal stuff for you, food stuff, breathing stuff. Your heart is tucked right in here in between your two lungs and protected by the sternum. And back here are your kidneys. Again, even with all of these organs in place, look at how much expansion is really possible. And look at that natural drape of all the structures as air leaves that space. Inhale, expand in multiple directions. Exhale, release. What we're looking at here are the intercostal muscles. So this is one of the ways I say that we know that ribs are designed to move. We have a set of intercostal muscles underneath the ribs and another set of intercostal muscles on the outside of the ribs, helping to enable all of that movement. Here we have the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the scalenes, and it's important to notice how many of these neck muscles wrap underneath bones of the spine and ribs, or at the very least are sort of influenced by the movement or lack of movement here. So again, this is why we need to always be checking in with the neck and head and making sure that we're not creating any excessive tension there and inhibiting that movement. I find that rather than focusing on trying not to be tense, one of the most useful things we can do in a very active way is focus on allowing all of the breathing structures to move the way they're designed to move. Our abdominal wall is not two-toned like this, but she's showing us multiple layers here at the same time. This band of muscle that goes horizontally is the transverse abdominis. That's the deepest layer of muscle, and you can see how it connects to everything here. And this top layer, kind of like what we think of as like the six-pack muscles, is the rectus abdominis, which goes vertically. One of the most important things she says in the narration that you can't hear is that all of these abdominal muscles participate but never initiate the act of breathing. That's such an important concept to clear up. The abdominal muscles participate but never initiate the act of breathing. Breathing is an act of the entire torso, and that's what she's showing you here with every layer of muscle. Every organ is designed to move in conjunction with free and natural breathing. 2 layers of back muscles here, quadratus lumborum, erector spinae. And returning again to the simple movement of the diaphragm. Not a balloon, not something you puff up, not something you can fill up or have direct control over. A beautiful involuntary muscle. Our primary job is just to get out of the way and let it all work the way that it's designed to work.